Now, the worrying scale of domestic abuse is all too often featured in the news, but a new report has highlighted the abuse suffered by one particular group, blind and partially sighted people. It suggests that 1 in 12 visually impaired people could have been the victims of physical, psychological or financial abuse. Well, on my programme for blind people In Touch last night, I talked to the chief executive of the Vision Foundation, which initiated this report, but first to 3 people who've had direct experience of an abusive relationship.
He would fly off the handle quite quickly. I thought that was perhaps just he'd had a hard day at work, and he was very quick to temper, but I just thought that was life, It was only as time progressed it came into the fore that he sort of wanted to control everything I did, wanted to know where I was, what I was doing. I had to keep in touch with him, let him know. When I went to work, he used to ask about the gentlemen that were at work and did they come over and talk to me and things like that. And it was like, well, I'm an independent woman. I can look after myself. Just because I'm blind doesn't mean I'm going to be taken advantage of, or you need to keep control of who I talk to. He would throw cups or plates at walls and smash them that I would feel go past the side of my head. And by him doing that and him sort of almost near missing me thinking, oh my God, I better do what he says to keep quiet, tread on eggshells every day. And it got to the point where I was afraid to go out because then I thought, he's only going to take it out on the kids.
Did you ever think about just walking out?
That was another thing that stopped me, see, because of my sight. I didn't think I could cope. My safety is my home, knowing where I am. And to move out and be somewhere else, not being able to find my way around, that would really scare me. He knew that I liked the security of somewhere where I knew where I was. Back when it was happening to me, coercive control wasn't a thing. To me, domestic abuse or things that happened in the house were violence, people getting hit. Well, I wasn't getting hit. He wasn't touching me. So I thought, well, this is just how it is.
My wife would read out letters to me and then deliberately withhold the vital information. One example of this is a utility service who'd written to me saying, you haven't paid such and such, you need to sort this out within a week, otherwise we will be taking steps, etc. And she would read it by saying, and we can be contacted on phone number. And I would say, what is the phone number? And she'd say, after all I've done for you, you're going to have to wait for 3 days for it. She would deliberately hide medication in obscure places. And sometimes there was gaslighting. We would have an argument, and at 9:30 she would say, I am your carer. At 9:45 she would say, I never said I was your carer.
What stopped you either from leaving or asking her to leave?
There was, if you kick me out, I will go to solicitors and I will make your life as financially difficult as possible.
I ended up in the marriage at 16 years old. It was a forced marriage and it was out of the country.
Now, that clearly was something that you hadn't wanted to happen. When did you realise, though, that it was perhaps worse than you'd imagined?
When he had joined me in the country about a year and a half later and I fell pregnant, we started making plans for the baby, saving up. And that's when it first started having a few disagreements. It had a lot to do with money. So it was sort of like, I can't give you the money, you're the woman. I went along. I wanted to start buying pushchair and cots, and there was no money in the saving safe that we had been saving money in. And when I questioned him about it, it was the first time that he thought I was being disobedient and actually slapped me across the face. When my child was about 2 years old, he wouldn't let me leave the house to attend a hospital appointment with my mum. He was tripping me up, and on that day I sort of had enough and I pushed him away, and he became extremely violent. I was repeatedly kicked in the head, and to stop me from calling an ambulance, he had taken my phone and he gave me medical care himself. And I kept telling him, something's not right. I'm losing vision in my left eye. It's all a blur. And he said, oh, when the swelling goes down, it'll get better. You'll be fine. And we carried on like that for another 7 months, to which I had lost about 80% of the vision in my left eye by then. I mean, I was so unready to get help because I was scared of losing my children. I thought as a disabled woman, I wasn't going to be able to keep my children. It was made obvious to me that I couldn't move on as a single parent with this impairment that I now have, that nobody would accept me. I fell into that trap and I believed it.
The views of just some of the people who were used for this and talked to for this survey. Olivia Curno is the Chief Executive of Vision Foundation. She told me what had shocked her most about the report's findings.
The scale is massive, Peter. We're talking around 1 in 12 visually impaired people, which equates to 188,000 people across the UK. The nature of the abuse is really harrowing. It's specific, and abusers use the individual, the victim's sight loss as part of their kind of arsenal of abuse. Victims would describe how they were at a medical appointment or in a situation in which they might have been able to disclose, but the abuser was sitting next to them and at no point asked to leave the room, because there's an acceptance, it seems, that if your carer is there, it's still confidential. So people didn't get opportunities to disclose. We also heard from people that when they disclosed to friends and family, in some instances, their disclosures were kind of disregarded with throwaway remarks like, you can't do any better, or what do you expect, or you should be grateful that he or she takes care of you as you're a blind person.
People will be shocked by a lot of this report, but what should happen as a result of your report? What actually needs to be done?
The Vision Foundation will be investing in this area, and we really welcome others who want to invest to support the sector to respond. We'd like to see a really seismic shift in how services approach individuals. We know there are multiple touch points with healthcare professionals and other practitioners that visually impaired people have. It is essential that they can have those meetings in private, and it's essential that these conversations are opened up. I would like to say, what we also learned from the research is that 90% of relationships are safe and positive and happy. It is perfectly possible for a visually impaired person to have a wonderful relationship with a sighted person. This is the minority, but we are talking about around 9% of people having experienced this. So we have to provide those opportunities for them to disclose.
Olivia Curno, who's Chief Executive of the Vision Foundation, talking to me earlier.